My dad would be proud. He would be happy. He would have that big smile that he always had because he loved the game of baseball. And he would thank the people that acknowledged him and say that it was something worthwhile. I mean, he understood how good of a baseball player he was and how good a number of the players in the Negro Leagues were. And they could play against anyone at any time, and oftentimes did on barnstorming tours. And they had many opportunities to play against some of the Major League Baseball players, and they held their own very well.
Oftentimes, you know, because of this movement, it took a while. I mean, it wasn't something that happened overnight. It's been a long time coming. Talk a little bit about maybe the role that you played in it, or how much conversation you had with baseball people about having this finally come to fruition.
Well, it's something that I think has been long overdue. The acknowledgement of men of color playing the game of baseball, because baseball, for a long time, before football became the most popular sport and then basketball became real popular, everybody wanted to play baseball. And the fact that there were so many players of color that didn't get opportunities to play the game, that's unfair. That's not right, and we need to right some of the wrongs that happened in this country, and I think this is one step going toward that. There's a lot of guys that played in the old Negro Leagues with the Birmingham Black Barons, the Black Yankees, all these different teams that were great players. My dad was one of them, and as I've talked to people over my lifetime, everybody that knew my dad back in the day, and there's only a few left now because they're all older or they've passed on, but everybody says that, Artie, your dad was a superstar before the term superstar was known. He was the most incredible baseball player as far as a shortstop. They called him the octopus because he could get to every ball. They couldn't strike him out. They couldn't get him out. He hit the ball wherever he wanted to, and he had a tremendous career.
You mentioned in a conversation that you had with Tommy Lasorda that he said he was the best baseball player that nobody ever heard of.
Yeah, when Coach Trapp was here, he had Tommy Lasorda come over and talk to the UH baseball team. And in meeting Tommy, he said, "Wow, you're Artie Wilson's son." He goes, "Man, your dad was the greatest baseball player that that America didn't know." He says, "Your dad could do everything." And I remember one year when I was here at UH, Willie Mays came over with the San Francisco Giants, and they played the Tokyo Giants at the old Honolulu Stadium. And Willie introduced me to Chuck Dressen, who was the manager of the Giants at that time. He said, "Skip, this is Artie's son, Artie Jr." And Chuck Dressen told me, I said, "Wow, you're Artie's son." He goes, "Man, your dad, when I had your dad, we didn't let him run in spring training because he would disappoint all the other players, and they would be all huffy and puffy because he would outrun everybody and then turn around and say, come on, guys, come on, guys." He just enjoyed the game of baseball.
An article I was reading, you had visited Birmingham, I think back in 2016.
Right.
Your father had already passed at that time.
Yes.
But how memorable was that, to go there, to see all of the history, and then to not only see that, but then to know that your father played such a huge role in that?
Well, it was pretty incredible. It was one of those aha moments for me to go there. I took my daughter, my youngest daughter, Madison, who was going to the University of Alabama. So I met a gentleman there that said, "I want to show you everything you need to know about Birmingham because your dad is a huge part of this community." And to walk to the Negro League Southern Museum, walk to the entrance of this new museum, and the hologram on the door with the hours of operation and everything else is my dad. And my daughter was like, "Wow, that's Grandpa." And that was a pretty cool moment. And then you go in the museum and there's a locker, and there's a locker for him, and a lot of his accomplishments are recognized and noted. And it's been pretty special.
I think when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame,
the Negro League
Hall of Fame, he had already passed, correct?
Yes, yes.
What does that mean to you to know that not only that he played such a role in that league, but to know that, like you said about your daughter, like that's my father? Yeah,
well, it's a special thing. My dad was the most humble guy in the world. He was so humble that people thought he was kind of quiet and easygoing. He had a fire and a burning desire to be great, and he felt like he could hit against anyone. He felt like he could bat against anyone. I remember my dad saying one time, well, if you had played in the major leagues, you probably wouldn't have had the kind of average you had. And my dad said, no, I would have had a better average because I would have seen better pitching. And my dad had the ability to go up, and Willie Mays and a few guys, when I met with them, they would say, your father could go up to bat, and the coach could tell him to wear out the pitcher. He could foul off 15, 20 balls at a time and then slap a single, batting left-handed to the left side, and get on first base and just smile. But he would wear the pitcher out, make the pitcher throw at him, throw around him, throw all over, and he'd still foul it off until he wanted to hit a shot to left field.
One of the really great seasons he had was in '48, the last player to hit over 400 in a top-tier league.
Yeah.
How important was that for him to be able to accomplish something that great?
Well, my dad was proud of that accomplishment. Of course, I mean, who wouldn't be if you bat 402 in baseball? And now I'm proud that my father is the last baseball player to bat over 400 in organized baseball. That's a tremendous thing for myself, for my sister, for my family, for my daughters. I've got 5 grandsons now and 1 granddaughter, and I think all of those offspring of Artie Wilson are going to be real proud for years and years to come, because even if someone gets over 400, he will still be one of the very few that did it in 1948.
Talk a little bit about the story of how your father, he wanted to play, and he didn't know that he was going to get that opportunity. So he was the one who said, I want to go down and play, and that opened the door for Willie Mays to come up. Can you just talk about that story?
Well, it's kind of interesting. My dad had an opportunity to play baseball. He was playing baseball in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico. And at that time, he had had a tremendous season. This was right after Jackie Robinson had been, the color barrier had been broken. The Cleveland Indians and the New York Yankees were trying to sign my dad. He was in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico. The owner of the Cleveland Indians got into a crop plane and was flying all around, low flying around Mayagüez, Puerto Rico with a megaphone saying, if anybody knows where Art Wilson is, tell him to meet me at this hotel because I want to sign him. And then it got on the radio station. So my dad eventually signed with the Cleveland Indians. The New York Yankees went to the commissioner of baseball and said that was unfair the way they did the deal. And after a long time discussion between the commissioner of baseball, New York Yankees, Cleveland Indians, the commissioner voided Cleveland's contract and awarded my dad to the Yankees. My dad didn't want to go to the Yankees. So he said he's going to go to play in Oakland. And then the Giants called, the New York Giants, and he played in 1951 spring training with the New York Giants. At that time, they had Alvin Dark and another guy, Eddie Stanky, I think it was, at short and second. During spring training, my dad batted over 400 because he got to play a lot. But then when the season started coming up, they were going with their 2 white players that they weren't going to move my dad. They weren't going to move my dad in and move one of their popular players out. So my dad said, I don't want to be a part-time player. If you're not going to play me, let me go and bring the kid up. And the kid he spoke about to Leo DeRocha was Willie Mays. And that's how Willie got up to the New York Giants.
And you also mentioned that your father played with Willie when Willie was 16 years old.
Yeah, Willie was 15, 16 years old with the Birmingham Black Barons. I actually have pictures of Willie in a headlock. My dad has him in a headlock when he's 16 years old in the locker room with my dad. And Willie's dad, Cat Mays, is who asked my dad to take care of Willie because he knew Willie was young and he would be, unsure of what's going on in the world, so to speak, outside of Birmingham.
You also went to Kansas City to visit the museum.
The museum,
there.
yep.
What were some of the emotions that you felt when you were there, witnessing all of that?
A lot of pride, a lot of I was in awe of the museum in Kansas City. And if anybody hasn't been to Kansas City, you need to go to that museum. It's incredible. But to go there, and it's real cute. A story about that is I went there, my sister went, and my dad was there, and they were interviewing my dad, an oral history with my dad. And the lady was from one of the TV stations, and she was talking to my dad, and she said, Artie, tell me, how did you enjoy baseball? And he went, I liked it. And then she would ask him another question. He'd do yes, no, because my dad wasn't going to talk about himself. And after about 15, 20 minutes, we took a break. And I said to the lady, I said, my dad's not going to talk about himself. I said, I do college basketball games. I'm not great at this. I don't profess to be what you are, but I know I can get my dad to open up. So when we go back, let me just ask him a few questions. Sure enough, we went back in, and I started talking to my dad just like he and I would talk. And all of a sudden, they said, let's stop this. Come back tomorrow. You do the oral history. So the oral history in Kansas City is myself interviewing my dad, which is something real special.
I mean, I would imagine that's got to be one of the most special moments
of my life.
Because he was there with you to witness that.
Yeah, to talk with him about it. And then my dad, I mean, Coach Jones is very close to me, and he and my dad were very close. And sometimes I go home, and Coach Jones would be sitting in the house just talking sports, talking baseball with my dad, because they were so close. And we used to go down to the ballpark in Portland and shag fly balls during batting practice and all those things.
Did you and your father ever have any conversations about this moment, about the Negro League stats being included in Major League Baseball, and when that happens, what that would feel like for him?
No, we never. I mean, my dad, that wasn't a big deal to him because he knew how good he was. And like I said, he was humble and quiet, but he had absolute confidence. And he knew he could hit against any pitching, didn't matter if it was the Negro Leagues, Major League Baseball, and he had absolute confidence. My dad is the kind of guy that if you talk with him before his death, and he was in his 70s or 80s, and you ask him, do you think you could hit that guy? He would look at you and with an absolute certainty go, I'd go 2 for 3 against him, 2 for 4 against him. And he felt like he could. One of the joys in my life, to be quite honest with you, Columbian used to have an all-star team here, Columbian All-Stars, and I was able to play on that all-star team with a bunch of guys, Leahy and Gary Sprinko and Howard Jaszewski, a bunch of different guys. And one year, my dad was here, and my dad played second, I played short, and we turned to double play in softball. And that was that's another one of the highlights of my life, is to be able to turn the double play with my dad on the infield in the softball game.
When you heard the news that it became official, that the stats would be included as part of the Major League Baseball stats, what was the first emotion you felt?
Pride. Pride that his accomplishments are going to be known across the country now. And when they say Ted Williams, who was a great baseball player, they're going to have to say, but after Ted Williams, Artie Wilson did it. And Artie didn't get the opportunities to showcase his skills on a national level to all of America. But if you look at my dad's statistics over his career is Hall of Fame worthy. And I'm hoping that at some point in time, Cooperstown will relook at things, because if there's someone, and not just because he's my dad, because there's many guys like that, but someone like my dad deserves to be in Cooperstown, as well as a lot of other 200, 250 hitters, when my dad's lifetime average is 350 plus.
I read that you had said you had wished you had never picked up a basketball, and that you probably would have followed in your father's footsteps and played baseball. Is that actually true? That's
a true statement. Baseball came easy to me. And when I say it came easy, I was with a baseball and a bat and glove all my life. And it was fun, and I never felt extra pressure being Artie Wilson's son. I just felt pride, and it was fun. It was natural. The difference was, in Portland, Oregon, you playing baseball, it's usually rainy and cold, and there were 20 people in the stands. And in basketball, we played and won the state championship, and we played in front of 13,000 people. So my little ego got in the way, and I said, oh, basketball is the way to go.
When you think of Cooperstown, and you mentioned, and I think that's such an important fact, because that's probably really the next step, right? When we look at integrating these stats into Major League Baseball stats, that's really the first step now. But if we're looking forward to how those stats compare to everybody in baseball, to your point, that is the next step.
Oh, should be,
right?
Absolutely. without a doubt. And just taking this one step is not enough. I mean, if we're going to do it right, the way it should be done, let's not only take this step, but let's look at everything. The Hall of Fame, if guys are in the Hall of Fame, I mean, there are so many guys besides my dad. I mean, there are guys who played in the Negro Leagues that were flat out ballers. My dad had lost his thumb to a pipe accident, so he didn't have the top part of his thumb. But the second baseman on his team in Birmingham had lost a finger. So they had a double play combination called nub to nub. And they had a double play combination that turned double plays all the time. But there are a lot of guys like that. Cool Papa Bill, Satchel Paige is in there. I mean, my dad batted against Satchel Paige. Greatest story that my dad will tell you is he batted against Satchel in Birmingham in a game, sold-out game at Rickwood Field. They came in, and Satchel Paige, my dad was first at bat, fouled off a couple balls. Then he slapped one to left field, and Satchel Paige was frustrated. And then my dad slapped it to left field down the line and ended up at second base. And Satchel Paige went to my dad and said, "Young buck, that's a pretty good hitting right there." And my dad was, young and not sure how he should respond. And Satchel said, "But let me tell you something. You might as well sit right there, because you're not going any further." He walked back to the mound from second base. The second, third, and fourth batters came up. He struck all three of them out, and then he turned around, tipped his cap to my dad, and walked off the field. That was my dad's first experience with Satchel Paige.
That's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
And the next thing I was going to ask you about is you mentioned you are working on a book,
Yep.
and you would like to have a documentary. I mean, this would be such an amazing story that people should know about it. Baseball fans should know about this, but people, just historians, people that every day just know that for so long there was that injustice.
Oh, no question.
And now, to be able to have it as part of official records, and the fact that you are talking about a documentary and you're working on a book, can you talk a little bit about how important that is to you now that we have this implemented? This is like the perfect time for people to start learning about the people that are in those record books.
Oh, no question about it. And that's something that's important for all Americans to know. And it's important for me personally because it's just my sister and I. My mom and dad are both gone now. I want my dad to get his flowers, so to speak. I want him to be acknowledged for how great he was, because he played the game of baseball the way it should be played, with joy, with enjoyment. He never complained about anything. He had to go to hotels and sleep in a different area because the team didn't allow him to go in the same hotels with them. He had to go here. He had to do different things. He faced a lot of prejudice and racism, but he didn't complain. All he did was get to the bat and just hit the ball and play the game he loved. I want America to understand that those are the stories that are out there and they're real. And let's not put it under the rug and say, oh, it didn't happen, or why don't you just move on? No, that's history. And we need to understand what history is, because history helps us be who we are now and who we want to be in the future. I have, like I said, 5 grandsons. I want all 5 of my grandsons to know about their grandfather or their great-grandfather. And I want my daughters to be proud of their grandfather. And I want all the people who knew my dad to have that same kind of joy, because they knew he enjoyed the game of baseball in the right way.
I'll ask you a final question. What was the one thing, when you think about all of the amazing things that your father accomplished, what is the one thing that stands out more than anything about either about what he taught you or about just the way that what you take away from him is something that was just so important to you?
Self-confidence. I mean, my dad, was the ultimate professional, but he didn't boast about it. He let his play on the court, his actions on the field speak for itself. My dad was humble, but beyond confident. Okay, he knew how good he was. He had a certain comfort with himself that he would smile. He never got angry at anybody. He would basically just kind of handle them, and by the end of the day, he would have you in his hand because of how he treated you. but he had a steely look. When he looked at you, you knew he meant business. And if he wanted to share a life lesson, you got that life lesson. He did it in a quiet way, but you definitely got the message.
How much did that help you in your own career, in your own athletic career?
It helped me an awful lot, although I had to be, my mother's genes are in me as well, okay? And so my problem with that is I was a little more lippy than my dad was. And so I had to be very careful even in basketball and baseball games. I couldn't say it if he were watching. I'd have to do it with my head turned so he wouldn't, because at the end of the day, he'd say, what's all that talking about? You know, he didn't want me to do that. He just wanted me to go out and play the game of baseball or play the game of basketball. And that was just the way he was. I had a little my mom in me in that I kind of, a little trash talk here and there.
I will leave it on that. What a fascinating moment for you. Thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, and I'm excited for not only my dad, for other men of color who played the game of baseball they loved, and they're now getting acknowledged. It's long overdue, and I think it's just the first step for recognition and acknowledgement, and I hope that will be the case.
I hope so too.
Thank
I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Artie.